The name is the name. Mustafa Sa is the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. He's right here. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. So there you go. Apologies for that mix-up.
No, it's okay.
Well, you know, there's been a lot making the rounds about that directive by the NBC to broadcast stations, both electronic and the print, electronic radio and TV. So you've seen that. Lots of reactions coming through, and who knows for how long it will be. So what were your immediate thoughts reading that, as a matter of fact?
My first thought is, I wasn't surprised really, because in the last 3 months, the GID has caused to issue 3 statements against the actions of the NBC. Even when they imposed $5 million fine on channels and Inspiration FM, we did that. But it's just that this is the first love letter in code from the new DG of NBC. Say that, number one, we shouldn't, as they put it, kind of glamorize bandits, kidnappers, and insurgents. And my worry about that letter is that it is not really, it is vague. When you say that, don't give details of security incidents, how details are the details? Is the NBC say that, for instance, if there's a kidnap in a school, we should report the numbers of students kidnapped, the name of the school, and the action of securities or try to, rescue them? So a lot of things are in that letter that I really don't really understand. Then number 3, say that your guest or analyst, you should caution them against making statements that will divide the country and all that. I think it's vague. Because to you, what is divisive may not be divisive to me. But I think the media is a platform where people come and express their ideas. And it's a marketplace of ideas, you know. Some could speak for and against anything. So you cannot say, don't say this and you say this. You know, but one thing is very clear, that the media would never promote violence. It's clear. We would never do that. Then number 2, the issue of security details, reported details of security agencies. For instance, I bet the media will ever report that there's a planned operation by the security agencies. The media will never report that, because when you do that, you are giving information to the enemy. I don't think the media will ever say public details of an ongoing security operation, for instance, or pictures of dead soldiers and wooden soldiers. That would be counterproductive. I don't think we ever do that. So it's clear. I think we need more clarity for the NBC or what he actually meant by that letter.
I guess that leads to that question I was going to ask you anyway. Do you see any value in that? Any validity in the content of that communication from the NBC? Do you see any justification for any concern, any reason for concern in that from what that letter says?
My immediate conclusion should be that it's a letter that has gone out as we are expecting something different, something new, because he said it's a caution, you know, we should be cautious of what we do, and we went ahead to list what should be done. From my own interpretation, it's difficult for us to really understand the motive behind it, because if they give us license to operate, it will tell us enough to ensure that we do what we have to do. You know, this idea that when you are in power, you feel that we are the only patriot, why others are not patriotic, I don't think we should go that line, really. The media, if you take a look at our history, we've always been patriotic. During the colonial days, the media fought for independence. Even when the military struck and targeted our democracy, we had vanguard in fighting for democracy restoration in this country. Even though we are enjoying today, we fought for it. Some of our colleagues even lost their lives in the process. And media had to be closed. We always fought for what is right. You know, that is our history. And to think that we glamorize, for instance, they say, don't glamorize insurgency. To glamorize means to make something seem acceptable kind of. Why should that? Why did the media do that? The media have been victims of evil insurgency in this country. Some of our colleagues have been killed. You lost a reporter to Boko Haram in Kano. This office in Abuja was bombed. Media houses in Kaduna were attacked. So why should we glamorize insurgency, for instance? Why should we glamorize kidnapping, where some of our colleagues have been kidnapped and even killed? As we speak, I was supposed to travel to my village today to our chief for Salah. I couldn't go. You know why? I heard reports that the Bini Auchi Road have been experiencing kidnapping cases for the past 1 week. So I couldn't take that risk. We are victims of this. So we would have loved it to even end today, if possible. We would love it to end. So this idea that we should do glamorize and all that we should report details of security, attacks or whatever. I don't know what they mean by that. You know, we are in the business of reporting events. The media doesn't create events. The media reports events. If attacks don't happen, we will not report. But if they happen, we will report them. That's our job.
You know, I mean, it's interesting you give that background of Nigerian media being patriotic, and you've referenced some of these incidents over time, and even till this moment, that Nigerian media continues to do to keep Nigeria together. And you also mentioned earlier that this caution or this particular statement was not as specific as you would have loved it to be. What kind of details would you have loved to see, at least such that we know this is regarding security, but the particular incidents, perhaps, you expect more to have been said? So what are those specifics?
Number one, NBC should have given instances of glamorization of insurgency, banditry, and kidnapping. There was no such example that the media had done. Then number two, when you say don't give details of attacks, what details as we leave out from any such attacks or kidnapping, for instance? Is it that you should report the number of students kidnapped if the school is attacked? Or if an emir is kidnapped, we shouldn't mention is the name of the emir? Or that insurgents have attacked a community and you keep 20 people, should report the number? I don't just get it. You know, that's why it should be better for MB to have given us instances of where the media, for instance, had glamorized insurgency or have over-reported attacks by bandits and insurgents.
You know, that particular statement started by saying that the NBC recognizes that bringing information on security to the doorsteps of Nigerians is a necessity, essentially saying that, I mean, this is part of the job that the media is meant to do. And, you know, the NCC said that, you know, too much details, like you've said, may have adverse implications on efforts of security. Well, that's that letter which you see on your screen there. Topics with ethnological quoting pitches one section of the country against the other. And, you know, it goes on and on to speak on some other issues. But I'd like to ask you, do you think that maybe the NBC might be referring to maybe some media organizations that are outside its purview? Because so far, at least the ones they regulate seem to have done a good job.
You know, you're right, because I'm also from the broadcast sector. I think, you know, there is this fear about the government, about the broadcast industry. That was why until 1992, when the Directive was promulgated by the IBB regime to deregulate the broadcast sector, it never allowed private people to participate. Even after the deregulation, we are highly regulated. You know, so it's clear that happens. You know, but the broadcast sector is still better in a way that we hardly report such things. Hardly. Some things you can read in the papers, you can never find them in broadcast stations. Never. Okay. Maybe because, you know, they feel that we regulate the broadcast sector, but in our press review every morning, we bring in the unregulated, in quote, newspaper and air them on TV. You know, that is why my fear is that I hope they will not, in the end, stop us from press review. We review newspapers every morning.
Let's even read that whole letter from start to finish. Because, I mean, some lawyers will take it clause by clause, you know, so that they can explain what transpired. So there you go. Newspaper review and current affairs programs, a need for caution.
Okay.
It goes on to read, the National Broadcasting Commission wishes to draw attention to critical issues arising from review of newspapers by broadcast stations daily. Headlines of most newspapers on daily basis are replete with security topics. While bringing information on security to the doorsteps of Nigerians is a necessity, there is need for caution as too much detail may have adverse implications on the efforts of our security officials who are duty-bound to deal with the insurgency. Some of the topics also have ethnological coating, thereby pitching one section of the country against the other and leaving Nigerians in daily hysteria. The Commission therefore enjoins broadcasters to collaborate with government in dealing with the security challenges by not glamorizing the nefarious activities of insurgents, terrorists, kidnappers, bandits, etc., advising guests and or analysts on programs not to polarize the citizenry with divisive rhetoric in driving home their point, not giving details of either the security issues or victims of these security challenges so as not to jeopardize the efforts of the Nigerian soldiers and other security agents. The Commission reminds you to be guided by the provisions of Section 541F and 543 of the NBC Code that states, quote, the broadcaster shall not transmit divisive materials that may threaten or compromise the indivisibility and indissolubility of Nigeria as a sovereign state, and in reporting conflict situations, the broadcaster shall perform the role of a peace agent by adhering to the principle of responsibility, accuracy, and neutrality, end of quote. Warm regards, Francesca Ayeto, Mrs. Director, Broadcasting Monitoring for Director General. Well, now we did reach out to the NBC to at least avail us that opportunity and privilege to explain to a lot of people who may not understand certain things here and leave it to their own interpretation. But I think they said that perhaps in the days ahead, we just might have that because they will not and are not able to make it on the program today. So that is that letter. But we have other panelists. Don't worry, Mrs. A, you still have a lot of opportunities to make a lot more points. But let's get to Mark, and I think she may have a question or two for you, as well as our guest there.
Indeed. Let me quickly put the question I have to our guest in the studio in Lagos before I introduce my guest here in Abuja, or the guests we have here in Abuja. I'm just wondering, you know that indeed broadcast is highly regulated and there's a lot of work going on in that particular sector. It's the reason why we've seen this letter in the first instance, directing broadcast stations to be mindful, be cautious, so to speak. And some people will say that perhaps if we had a way of checking what was going on generally within the media space, perhaps there would have been no need for this. Don't forget that early this year, a colleague of ours had cause to write about her concerns in the media sector. I don't know if you saw that letter. It was written by Kadri Ahmed, you know, drawing the attention of fellow journalists to how things were being reported in the media space. She feared that the way things were going, let's not forget that at some point at the beginning of this year, there were heightened fears that things could degenerate. We saw what was happening in Ibadan. We saw some parts of the East, and we also saw reactions from the northern part of the country. In your own reading of things, do you think that we have played a role that moderates, or do you think that we have also, you know, added in the manner in which we report certain stories, that we've added to how things, according to this letter, the hysteria that Nigerians feel about the security situation in the country?
First and foremost, if attacks don't happen, the media will not report them because they're happening and there is fear in the land. You expect the media serves the public. You know, if bandits don't attack a school or kidnap 2 other students, the media wouldn't even report it. But there are certain things that actually have my concern, really, but not necessarily from the broadcast. For the print, for instance, you know, first and foremost, there are some papers are set up for different purposes, so serve different interests. For instance, personally, I'm against the fact that we stigmatize some criminals or attach the ethnic origin of a criminal in our reports. I am clearly against that. So I've seen that in some of the newspapers, and I'm against it. You know, but what I also notice is that regional papers tend to kind of play up regional interest. I think today in modern media, I think that is allowed. Even in the US today, you could see Fox News, CNN, and other people. They even go ahead and endorse candidates during the elections. You know, they move to that level right now. You know, if you don't allow this happening, you can go and counter it. But I do know that, for instance, in channels, if somebody says, for instance, let's form our own country based on our own ethnic origin, some may say, we don't like it. You know, but you can put 2 of them on your program, you express your idea, another will come and counter it. Let the viewer decide who is right or wrong.
Sorry, but let me just jump in and spin off of that question. Could it be that the media, have we been able to draw the line so that we don't necessarily give them oxygen, the insurgents or terrorists now, because, you know, a lot of them might like propaganda. So is the media feeding into that? Have they been able to draw the line? Could that be the concern that the Commission has?
You know, definitely, you know, for terrorists feed on propaganda. They feed on publicity. I think we should deny them that, really. For instance, you will see a cover of a governor passing, they can just fire a gun, even though they know that you can't get the governor, but just to have big headlines the next day. Governor's convoy attacked, you know. They feed on publicity. We can deny them that. You know, we are not, the media in Nigeria, we are not really, for instance, the issue of security, for instance, we always support the security agencies. You know, we will not, I will be here to say that there is a plan by security to carry an operation and you expect the media to report it. We'll be giving information to the terrorists. Before they get it, they will put our media, our soldiers in harm's way. We will not ever do that. But clearly, even when there are excesses on the part of the media, there should be ways to deal with it. There are ways to deal with it. We are in broadcaster, for instance. The NBC is there. That's why I said in the letter, they should have told us exactly instances where we have glamorized attacks, or we have given 2 more details of attacks. But they did say that. Or maybe they convey a meeting of broadcasters and tell us exactly what they mean.